You are listening to episode 1 of a Radiance Revival podcast, and holy crap, it's episode 1. You are listening to a Radiance Revival podcast where we rebirth and unearth your inner brilliance by focusing on love, energy, and freedom. I am your host, coach, and brilliance believer, Catherine Sogard. In this podcast, you will learn that you are your biggest advocate, fan, and creator of your own destiny by using the radiance you were born with. When you are empowered to use this inner brilliance, you can create your best life. So let's get this Radiance Revival started. Holy cow, it's a podcast. All right. My name is Catherine Sogard, and I am a certified life coach, and this is episode 1 of a Radiance Revival, and I'm super excited about this because I feel like this is my rebirth from Queen Sparkle Spitter to a Radiance Revival, and hopefully the key to this phrase is not just my revival and my comeback to social media and content creating, but hopefully these podcast episodes inspire you and light the flame that you were born with, that inner brilliance, and it manifests into this huge, powerful tool that you can use to achieve every single dream you have dreamt for yourself. So with a Radiance Revival, I really wanted kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes type of thing, a revival of your inner brilliance coming out. And I think it's going to be a revival for me and hopefully a revival for you. This episode, we are going to talk about something that you're probably familiar with. You've either heard someone say this to you or you've heard this said to someone you know or about someone you know. And we are going to be talking about commitment and how it's not necessarily our fear of commitment. It's actually something a little deeper that is not allowing us to commit to our future dreams, to a relationship, to achieving the things we want to achieve in life, and how if we dig a little bit deeper and we do a few key things in our lives, we can overcome that stigma of our fear of commitment. We're going to get deep down into this fear of commitment and talk about what's underneath that, which is actually the crap that's holding you back. You don't have commitment issues. We just have other crap that's holding us back from doing the things that we truly want to do. So first off, I just want to tell you that I myself in the past have been a commitment phobe. One place that I can really tell you about where I've been a commitment phobe is in my own business. And it can show up, and I think you'll find this about your own commitments, that it can show up in any odd, weird, crazy place that you, that it could come up in. You know, it might not be like the traditional, like, I have commitment issues, you know, that you hear people talk about. And the one place that it showed up in my life was my business. And that can be anywhere from committing to a logo, committing to colors, committing to creating the perfect program, even committing when I'm putting out new content and I feel like it's not good enough. And so we're gonna talk through some of those symptoms that can come up. They can show up in your relationships. They can show up in your dreams. Your dreams for the future. They can show up in goals that you set. They can show up in your health. They can show up, that commitment phobia can show up in your work, and so many other places that we have in our lives that mean a lot to us, and we know we want to do big things with, but we just have a fear of something, and it can come up as that fear of commitment. So, for instance, I have been trying to come back. I don't know necessarily what got me off of periscoping and creating daily video content. And maybe I really do. I mean, the fact is I do know what it is. I just don't know that I'm ready to share all the gory details of what brought me to the point where I decided I was no longer going to create video content on a regular basis. And with that brought a lot of stuff up. I mean, it brought up a lot of stuff because it kind of became who I was. I periscoped every day at 9:30 Central Time because I'm in Iowa. Whoop, whoop. And I stopped doing it. And so that also changed a lot of things in my life. I don't know that I'm ready to share the gory details, but I'm ready to come back. So as I was preparing to come back, I was working on my logos and my colors and really trying to create my brand so that when you see some of my content, whether it's a video or a podcast or a blog, or even down to the finite details of my Instagram, that it would look like me. Like it would say Catherine Sogard, energy-packed life coach. Like it would just tell you that. And with that, you want to have a good color scheme and you want to have good colors and you want to have a great logo. And if you know anything about me, I started my business before I got married. So a lot of my business logos and everything had my previous initials. And so it seemed like a good time to really negotiate some of that and decide. And I kind of worked on it by myself a little bit. And I talked to some of my business friends to get their opinion on what I was creating. And I just couldn't commit. I didn't know what colors I wanted to use. And I just feel like some days I feel like super royal blue. And some days I feel really like my favorite color green. And gold has always been something that's been branding of mine. So do I incorporate that? What do I do? And it just felt like to the point where I was froze and I couldn't take any steps forward until I made decisions. I could not take steps forwards in my business. I couldn't create programs. I couldn't do any of this until I got my branding down. So I kind of got one track mind, right? So that kind of leads me into some of the symptoms that can come up when we fear that commitment and we're not showing up in our relationships, in our, in our goals for the future, in our dreams for the future, in our health or our work. Sometimes we feel stuck, and sometimes we can take it to the next level and we just feel paralyzed. I mean, I got this way. You can't even make a decision, so you just don't do anything at all. You're just so paralyzed that you can't move forward at all. This can also show up as maybe a lesser symptom as procrastination. I mean, anybody out there that procrastinates? That is something that commitment can sometimes show up as a procrastination. So are you wanting to lose weight and find your dream man and have the perfect job and make $1 million and have the perfect house and have the perfect dog, but you just aren't sure where to start. So you just kind of put it off. I'll redo my resume later, or I'll save money later, or, one way that this procrastination has come up and been a repeated pattern in my life. I think a lot of the times when we have problems, this is a hint, is you see this same pattern over and over again in your life. So throughout your life, you've seen kind of this same pattern. And this is something that's always come up. I always felt like I was waiting for something, just waiting around to wait around. I mean, I was just waiting for life to happen to me. And so I think that is a symptom of having an issue with commitment, having something that's really holding you back, or the outcome of something holding you back is a fear of commitment or having issues with commitment and feeling stuck and feeling paralyzed or procrastinating or even breaking down. I'm going to tell you a story, and this is really kind of embarrassing. my fear of commitment has actually turned into an anxiety from time to time. And a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, can't remember. Obviously, it seems like a long time ago. I got this super paranoid feeling. I was terrified. I felt like the world was going to end. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I flipped out. I lost my shit. It was horrible. I came home and thank goodness my husband was home, and I was crying and he really couldn't console me, and we kind of talked over the problem and we kind of decided it wasn't a big deal. We were upstairs and I came back downstairs and I just started uncontrollably bawling, and I crawled into our closet that's inside our house. Like, you walk in and it's a closet for coats, right? And I just bawled. I just broke down. So sometimes this commitment issue, when we haven't cleaned out the crap that's holding us back, it manifests into this huge thing. Like, I hadn't dealt with what I needed to deal with. And so it ultimately compounded over time into this paranoia, which made me break down and basically have a panic attack. It was just horrible. It was horrible. And I ended up, taking a few breaths, doing a little tapping. We can talk about tapping in a whole other episode, and we're going to talk about it a little later. And kind of repeated some of the things that I knew to be true, that my brain was telling me weren't true, but I know they are true. Like, this isn't a big deal. This too shall pass. You have everything in this moment that you need. And I finally kind of was able to overcome. I ended up watching a really dumb movie to get my mind off of it, went to bed, and in the morning did a little meditation on it. So it ended up working out fine. But I think sometimes when we have these goals and we have these important relationships and we have these dreams and we have this hope for our health and we have these dreams about what work is going to look like for us in the future, we can let our non-actions take a hold of us to the point where we don't do anything. And then we manifest these huge, horrible situations where something the switch can be flipped and we just lose our shit. Now, this is not to say that panic attacks are all easy to deal with, part of this experience is that I've had a couple panic attacks before. And so when I felt it coming on, I knew I had some strategies on how to handle it. And obviously, if you are suffering from some of this paranoia or anxiety over a long amount of time, or even a couple of weeks, it's important to, get advice from your doctor and make some plans and develop a strategy on how to handle that. So knowing that, it's important that I tell you that, sometimes we can't handle these things on our own, and our strategies aren't always successful in every situation. So it is important to take care of your mental health and call a professional when you need to. I think that if you have been told that you have a commitment issue, or you're not taking action on something you really desire, and it's something that is burning in your soul and that you were meant to do, but you can't seem to jump over that hurdle to do it, that can also be called a commitment issue. And I think with some of these tips and tricks that I'm going to give you now, it might help you just jumpstart the engine so you can at least take a few steps forward. And I really, truly believe in the compound effect. And I will put the link to the Compound Effect book on Amazon, because I think it's super valuable. And when you get some time, you should definitely read the book called The Compound Effect. Basically what it is over time, things compound and grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And the cool thing about the compound effect is little steps over time compound into big changes. So it just takes a little bit of something to change everything. And that's why I said in the beginning of this podcast, to change the world, you just